Welcome to the Whole Career Podcast with Advent Health. I'm Brandon Strawn, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sky Kellogg.
Each episode features conversations with various healthcare professionals who will share their personal career journeys, insights, and perspectives on various healthcare careers. From nursing to technology to leadership, we'll cover a wide range of topics to help you stay informed and inspired.
Whether you're just starting out in your healthcare career, looking to pivot, or a seasoned professional looking to take the next step, this podcast is for you. We hope to empower you with the knowledge and the tools needed to make a positive impact in your field. At Advent Health, we believe that we are greater as a whole, and we invite you to join us on this journey as we explore the world of healthcare careers together. Welcome back to the Whole Career Podcast. Today, we have our guest, Wilky Briette, and he is a human resource director. We're so excited to have you on the podcast. How are you doing today, Wilky?
I am doing well, Brandon. Thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, can you just start by telling us, obviously we discussed your title a little bit before this, but just giving us your title and kind of an overview of everything that you do, your responsibilities as a human resource director.
Yeah, so I am a human resources director for one of our Advent Health facilities. And really my job is really to help support the campus from all things human resources at a campus level, and also to be that strategic HR business partner for our leaders in our executive team to help support our HR initiative, our HR strategies. Some of those may come from our corporate organization, and we are the ones to help implement those here at the campus level. So every day looks different. There's never a dull moment in HR, but ideally what we do is support the needs of the campus and support the needs of our leaders from a team member or from an employee perspective and any of those initiative and strategies that relates to employees.
Thank you, Wilky. And Wilky, the role that you're in within Advent Health and really throughout healthcare organizations in general is a very unique and renowned role. A lot of team members within human resources would love to be in your position. So if you could just give us an overview of your career journey, mapping out to how you got to where you are today, so our listeners can get an understanding of what that path looked like for you and what it could look like for them as well.
Yeah, so my journey has really been interesting. I started in healthcare when I was 18 as a patient care technician. Really, my parents wanted me to be a nurse, but as I started working in healthcare, I was like, man, there's so much more you can do than just be a nurse and a doctor. And so I started off as a patient care technician and decided that I was going to major in healthcare administration instead of nursing. Didn't tell my parents that until like the last semester of undergrad. But when I graduated college, I had an opportunity to work for a company. I actually started off in environmental services as an operations manager, leading environmental services team. And I will tell you, some people think housekeeping is anyone can do it. It's just like cleaning your house. It's not. There is a science to it. And I learned that very quickly. So while I was working for that company, as I started to lead employees and some of the initiatives that I was working with my HR manager with at the time for my employees, I really began to develop an interest in HR. And so every opportunity I had that I could be in the HR office to talk about something related to employees, I was in the HR director's office talking about it. And so that's kind of how my interest developed. And I was working for this company. And during one of my annual performance evaluation with my leader, I said to her, hey, I really would like to get into HR. And I said, hey, I started a graduate program to get my master's degree in human resources. At some point, I would like to use that degree once I'm done. And so initially, I didn't step into HR. She worked, within her powers to get me some what I call stretch assignments to help in some HR initiatives, some HR projects. That really, she didn't have to do that, but she understood that I was looking to expand into HR. And maybe a year after that, I ended up entering an HR position as an HR specialist is where I started and working there and supporting a hospital. And so that's kind of how I got into HR. And From there, I've grown to love HR, and I've done several different things in HR. I've been a recruiter before, which is very interesting. It's really exciting when you get to make offers to candidates and they accept your positions, and you get to celebrate with them. I've been an HR manager for many years. That's where I spend most of my career in HR, and now in an HR director role, going on 3 years now here with Advent Health in that role. So it's been an exciting journey. I don't think anyone grow up and say, "Hey, I want to be an HR manager, an HR director. I want to work in HR." I think it's something that just falls in your lap, and you either love it or you don't. But for me, it's definitely been a love, and it's been an exciting career, and I love every part of it, everything that I do, and it's been a great journey so far.
That's awesome. And really quickly, I you mentioned something. You said stretch assignments. So I don't know if that's a term that Wilkie has kind
It's
of
an
coined,
HR
or
term.
okay, that's an HR term. So, in thinking about our audience, right? You maybe some of the listeners who are trying to pivot. Is that something that you bring up to your manager and say, like, "Hey, I want stretch assignments"? Like, how do you go about kind of bringing that up, knowing that you may not be in that exact field? In your instance, it would have been HR, knowing that you weren't exactly in that field, but wanting to be a part of that. So, how does that work? Can you kind of talk about what someone should do if they're looking for those stretch assignments, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. One, having a leader who really wants to understand how do you want to grow in your career and your profession. That's the first part. And then, them helping you to be able to do so. And I think the second part is really, if there's something that you're interested in, raise your hand and say, "Hey, is there a possibility I can shadow a leader in this space or someone in this job, just to really see what it's like?" And if it's something that you can do, I think that is a great opportunity. Depending on the organization you work for, depending on the size of the organization, you may be able to help support with different assignments, or different strategies within that organization. I started off by helping with some training, some HR training, some leadership training, some management training, because I really had an interest really for employment law. And so I started by training some of our leaders on some of the laws that relate to employment, in the state of Florida and across the nation. And so that's kind of how I started, taking something that really applies to all leaders, no matter what area you work in. Employment law doesn't just apply to HR. If you're a leader in an organization, there are certain laws and regulations that you have to follow. And I started there by facilitating sessions for our leaders. And from there, my interest grew. So I think it's raising your hand to say, "Hey, there's this thing over there, and I think I might be interested in it. Is there an opportunity I can help? I can support that, or I can sit in on a meeting or sit in on a session just to see what that's really like." So I think, yeah, raising your hand and having a leader that's going to be able to support you with that.
Absolutely. I thank you for sharing that. And even to kind of go a little bit deeper or to add on to that, I think that when you go and you raise your hand and having a great leader, also like putting some thought into whatever it is you're wanting to go into, I think, at least for me, and that just allows the manager to not have all of the pressure of finding something for you to do, right? So maybe coming with an idea or identifying a gap or something like that, right? Taking a leap of faith, or just showing them, hey, this is what I, think about this, right? So I think that helps as well, so that you guys can kind of partner in this situation, the manager and yourself, partner on trying to find those areas where you could exist in. So yeah, no, I
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
Yeah, and Wilkie, obviously you had a very strategic mindset very early on in your career when thinking about what that interest was, right? With law, like you said, you were interested in that as it appealed to everyone. So that was a natural, a natural skill that you have. But what are some important skills or qualities that have helped you succeed in your career that you had maybe naturally off the bat or that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things is, the ability to be flexible, especially working in healthcare. And I think we've all learned that from from the pandemic, from COVID, the ability to be flexible. And one of the things I think is important too, especially when you work in HR, is finding ways to say yes to the organizational needs and to the leads of our leaders. I used to work for an organization, and the chief medical officer, when I was leaving, she said, "You know, the one thing I appreciate about Wilkie, when I come with my grand ideas, he always says to me, 'Yeah, I don't think we can do that, but maybe we can do this.'" And I think that's one of the things that has helped me to grow in my career is really finding ways to say yes to an organization, finding ways to say yes to the strategies that relates to our team members. When a leader has an idea or if an executive has an idea, maybe we can't execute it fully the way they would like, but how do we find ways to do that within the parameters that we can operate? And so that's one of the things that I think that has been very helpful for me in my career. And also building relationships. When you work in HR, you have to have relationships. It's a role where you're dealing with people every single day, so you have to have that ability to interact with people, even when they're upset with you. Right? You can't take it personal. You have to help them see the bigger picture, or help them to see where you're trying to go with them. So I think for me, having that ability to interact with people, I'm very much an introvert, but in my full-time daytime job, I'm an extrovert. I'm required to be an extrovert. And so, when I see our employees, I'm going to say hello to them. I'm going to engage with them. If I remember something about their children or birthday or a milestone in their life, I'm going to make sure that I call that out. So it's also about building those relationships and maintaining those relationships.
Yeah, Wilkie, that is so surprising to me to hear that you would consider yourself an introvert. But I think that really just shows how much dedication you have to your role and making a difference in your team, because you put yourself out there because you know that's what they need, and really demonstrating that service standard of love me, getting to know them and making a difference by understanding who they are outside of work. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that will be surprising to some of our listeners as well, but just a wonderful reminder that sometimes you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone to be able to make the difference that you're meant to do in your everyday life. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
So, Wilkie, I want to take it back a little bit to when you mentioned that you were, your parents wanted you to become a nurse, and, you weren't really wanting to follow that track. And so you changed without telling them. I hope your mom, is not listening to this, or hopefully you've told her. She must know by now. But I guess taking it back, right, wanting to speak to the folks that might be interested in HR and are at like the collegiate level, because you studied when I looked, I think it's long-term care administration,
Yeah.
to be exact, right? So that's bachelor's level. So
Yes.
that being long-term care, right? At that time, I don't know if you were interested in HR, but is that a degree that help pave your path into HR, or can you just give us kind of some insight on how that degree may have helped your thought process behind, what you're doing today?
Yeah, so it is long-term healthcare administration. I also thought I wanted to run a nursing home. That was part of it. When I was an undergrad, I did my internship in a nursing home, and I was able to rotate through the different departments. And I spent some time in HR. And again, I really was connected with HR even then because, you get to help people in HR. You get to hire, you get to do exciting things in HR. And so I gravitated towards that. But yes, I believe, my degree prepared me. Part of being an HR is that, you have to be able to understand a budget. You have to be able to understand how to deal with people. So I had a few HR classes, economics, accounting classes, finance classes, some leadership courses. So truly, those courses I really think were helpful as I transition into my career as HR, because all of those things, while I had the textbook knowledge, working in HR now, I have the experience to complement the textbook knowledge, but the education was important because I learned a lot that today I'm like, oh man, that makes sense. Now I can understand credits and debits, when we're looking at a budget and, when we're saying, hey, you need to manage your budget, looking at your finances. It all makes sense now. But I believe, a lot of the courses that I took outside of the general education courses were really helpful um, to me and today are still helpful in my career.
No, that's great. And then I guess just a follow up to that is, as far as what human resources kind of is today, and maybe we'll cover what it looks like at Advent Health, right? Like
Yeah.
being in the recruiter position myself, right, and trying to understand. Okay, I've joined the team. Excuse me. They probably have to edit that part out, but I joined the team as a recruiter specialist, and ton of other recruiters are, they have their eyes set on human resource manager or human resource business partner one day. And to be honest, because we have like talent acquisition and then human resources, I'm not sure. So is talent acquisition a part of human resources? And is it easy to go from a recruiter then to a human resource manager? I guess so. That's kind of twofold. Is talent acquisition and human resources, are those two things separate? And then of course the second part being, as a recruiter, what may be some of the steps you can take if you actually want to cross over and make it into the human resources management world?
Yeah. So, talent acquisition is a part of human resources. There are many functions within human resources. So there's benefits, there's payroll, there's talent acquisition, there's compensation. So, there's so much to human resources than just, what most people think of we do in HR, which is hire and fire people, but we do so much more than that. And so, I think when you look at it, you can see a variety of ways where HR plays a role in an organization. But, Brandon, for me, like I said, I started off as a recruiter. I was once a recruiter, kind of move into a senior recruiter role and move into an HR manager role. So definitely there are transferable skills from a recruiter to stepping into a manager role. Again, is there a bit of a learning curve? Absolutely. As you step into an HR manager role, depending on the size of your organization, you may have a lot that you have to do. You may have to do some employee relations. You may have to do some compensation. Here at Advent Health, we have a bit of a different model where, and I think we might talk about this a little bit later, we use a shared services model and we allow those individuals who are experts in their area to focus on that area. But if you work for a smaller company as an HR manager, you could do all of those things. You could do recruitment, you could do compensation, you could do employee relations. So, it just depends on the size of the organization that you work for. But definitely, I would say, if you're a recruiter today, there are definitely transferable skills that you can bring to a manager role. As a recruiter, you get to talk to people every single day. You have to convince them to come work for our organization as opposed to another organization, right? And so you have those relationship building skills, those communication skills, those interaction skills, which are very much needed when you transition to a manager role, when you're dealing with employees, when you're working with leaders, when you're working with executives. You have to be able to build relationships. You have to be able to build trust. And you do all of those things as a recruiter when you're working with a candidate to get them to join an organization. So I think there are a lot of transferable skills that you can take from a recruiter role to an HR manager um, in an organization.
That's so helpful, Wilkie, because I think we really wanted to use this conversation to break down the misconception that there's only one way to get to an HR director role. There's a lot of different ways and routes you can take, and obviously the way that you began your whole career is unique to you, and there's so many different unique paths that could be taken to get to the area that you're in. So I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that and to know and to really look for what their skills that they are learning each and every day are growing and enhancing each day as a recruiter, as, an operations specialist, whatever it may be, that it can transfer into what may be their dream role. And you did touch on shared services, so I'd love to jump into that. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about Advent Health's shared services model, and then talk about how this benefits our team members and why that sets us apart from other organizations?
Yeah. So a lot of times you find a shared services model in a bigger organization like such as Advent Health. And so really what it does is from a campus level. So I sit at a hospital. Um, there's a lot of transactional work that happens in HR, right? And so with a shared services model, a lot of that transactional work is removed from the campus level, and the shared services team, they manage that for us. So anything from payroll, anything from benefits, employee relations, um, time and attendance. So that's a shared services model. And at the campus level, we're able to focus more on the business strategies as they relate to HR. How can we partner with the business to implement those HR initiatives, those HR strategies? We're spending time rounding on our team members within our departments or within the units, our nurses, our patient care technicians, our environmental services workers, partnering with leadership, consulting with leaders on things that maybe happen in their department, workforce development. So shared services, the model really is helpful. One also so that we are doing the same thing across the organization. When you're an organization as large as Advent Health, you want to make sure that your processes, your policies, your benefits, those things are consistent. When you don't have a shared services model, you can't tell what this hospital over here is doing compared to this hospital over here because everyone's doing their own thing. But with shared services, we can now say, okay, this is how we're going to manage this HR function all across the organization when it comes to payroll or benefits or employee relations. So that for me, I think is a great perk. Advent Health is the first organization I've worked for that has a shared services model. Prior to coming to Advent Health, I worked for an organization. We did not have shared services model. So as an HR manager, I did benefits, I did payroll, I did leave of absence, um, I did employee relations, I did workers' comp. We did all of those things as an HR manager, which is great because I think when you get to do those as an HR manager, you learn a lot about HR. When you have a shared services model, you may not be as much involved in those items, in those areas of HR, but you may get to consult and may get to give some recommendations. So, those are the difference when you look at a shared services model is that you have consistency, you have a center of expertise that can give you the best information as far as what's happening in the industry, what's happening in your area, what's happening across the nation, where at a campus level, we may not have had access to that information, but shared services model can bring us that information to the campus level.
That's amazing. And I think that we're fortunate, right, to really have that shared services model because it provides that standardization for, the company. But then, like you said, in your hospital, right, you're able to meet the people where they are, do the rounding, right, and really kind of tailor some of the human resource things to specifically to that hospital, right? Especially because
Yes,
we're a nationwide hospital. We know that, some of the hospitals in Florida, the people that we service, our community is going to look different in
it
the
is.
hospitals that we have in Texas. So that's amazing. I think I wanted to, so looking at human resources and a lot of the soft skills that are required. I often hear, right, you have the and I'm probably going to mess this up, but the SHRM or the
Yep.
SHRM. All right, am I saying that right?
Sure. Yes, that is correct.
Sherm.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. We try to do our research on all of this stuff
Yeah.
before the podcast. So right now we're doing good, Sky. So this is good. But so
Mhm.
the Sherm, right? You see that, and then a couple other. I think they have the
PHR.
PHR as well, and
Yes.
so there are different certifications that can help with that. What are some that some certifications that you would recommend if someone is trying to kind of develop those skills like you talked about? You can make that transition from recruiter to human resource manager and then human resource director. But what are some of the certifications that might help them add to their toolbox?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brandon. Yeah, so definitely there's the SHRM certification that's out there. There's the PHR, which if you've worked in HR for a very, very, very long time, PHR is probably what you're most familiar with. And SHRM over the last several years has become an industry standard for HR professionals. But with those, with the PHR and the SHRM, there are some requirements that you have to meet in order to sit for those certification. Either you have a degree or you've worked in HR for X number of years. Each of those organizations have different requirements. But one of the things that I've had friends to say, "Hey, I'm interested in HR. What can I do to get started in HR?" Some local colleges and some universities, they have like a fundamentals of human resources course or a HR certification that really you don't need any HR experience or maybe not even a degree in HR, but it gets you exposed to human resources. It gets you to better understand the work that we get to do in HR, because the work we do in HR can be complicated. Part of our job as HR professionals is also to help mitigate risk for the organization. Our practices, our policies that we have in place to ensure they're compliant with state and federal regulation. And so those are some of the skills that are important. So when you're dealing with, let's use an example of a potential termination, a leader wants to terminate an employee, and you're having that conversation, you have to one understand the reason for the termination. Are you following your policies? Are you following your procedure? Ensuring that the termination is not discriminatory. And so if you don't have that knowledge and a little bit of that exposure, then it's a little bit difficult to mitigate risk for the organization. So for someone that's looking maybe to get a little bit more knowledge and understanding of HR, I would say, an HR certification, if you're working on a degree, see if your institution will allow you to do an HR certification or a minor in human resources, because that's going to be a very valuable tool that you have in your toolbox. Because I do think the foundation is important, right? I think anyone that works in HR, you have to understand employment laws. Those are the things that are going to keep you out of trouble as an organization. And and those laws are designed to make sure that we're doing what's right by our employees as an organization. So I think those things are important if you're going to step into HR, is to have a fundamental, very introductory understanding of what HR is and some of the functions and disciplines of human resources.
Yeah, Wilky, that's really helpful. And just as a reminder for our listeners, especially our internal team members, we do have SHRM opportunities. There's a SHRM class that's offered, so you can learn from our very own team members who have passed the certification. So there's lots of internal opportunities. If you are with us at Advent Health, if you're thinking about joining the organization, keep in mind we have so many resources to accomplish what Wilky was just covering.
Yeah.
And this is something that I kind of want to shift gears to a little bit, Wilky, to get your insight in regards to the industry, the HR industry as a whole. What would you say some of the biggest challenges are that you're facing, and how do you see that evolving in the future, or how is Advent Health, helping combat that right now?
Yeah, so I think I've worked in healthcare my entire career, and we've always heard there's a nursing shortage, right? And it's kind of the thing we got used to, but there's a nursing shortage. I think COVID really made that even more obvious to us. We knew there was a nursing shortage, but I don't know that a lot of organizations realize it was at this magnitude. And so some of the challenges that we're facing is really a shrinking labor force, right? When we look at the labor force, there is not a lot to choose from, so organizations are competing in the same pool. You guys who work in recruiter probably know that very well. If a person is interviewing for a job with us, they're probably interviewing with three other organizations for the same position, because the workforce labor pool is not as big as it used to be. And so some of the things, we're doing at Advent Health, and our chief people officer had talked about this recently, is we have to grow our own. How do we look internally within our organization and develop our own team members? For example, Brandon, you talked about moving from a recruiter to an HR manager. What does that look like? And some of the things we're doing at Advent Health is this guided career path. How do we help our team members who have a vision to see, how do I get to this role that I want to be in, right? And so Advent Health has done a lot of intentional work around that to help our team members see, hey, I can get from here to there by doing all these things, by getting this certification, by getting this degree. And so those things are important. And so when you can't find it anywhere else, you have to grow your own. So that's definitely one. I think one of it too is COVID really, during COVID, people really realized the importance of flexibility and what that really meant for them. And so we have a workforce that really is looking for flexibility in their work. And so we have to be able to meet those needs of um, team members who want flexibility, whether that's remote, whether that's virtual nursing, whether that's part-time work versus full-time work, whether that's um, 12-hour shifts versus whether that's 10-hour shifts versus 12-hour shifts. The workforce has changed so much, and we have to be able to find ways to meet the needs of our employees, of our team members. So those are some of it too. And I think one of the things that's also important, and I've heard our chief people officer say this as well, is that purpose matter. Team members want to feel a sense of belonging. They want to come to a place where they feel valued, where they feel heard, where they feel that their inputs matter. And so for us at Advent Health, I think that's refocusing on our mission, refocusing on our culture, and really getting people to see who we are as an organization and help people to see how they can be their whole selves. We talk a lot about whole person care. If you've seen any of our commercial, you've seen any of our ads, we talk about whole person. And so for us, how do we care for the people that work for us, both inside of work and outside of work? Because no one comes to work and leave their home self at home and just bring their work self to work, right? Whatever's happened at home, they're bringing it into the workplace. So how do we care for those things? How do we care for team members? How do we ensure that whatever's happening at home, can we support them at work? What are some resources that we have available? We've launched many resources here at Advent Health, especially when you look at mental health, things like Ginger and Headspace to help support our team members, because the pandemic has done many of our team members, especially those on the front line caring for patients. And so we want to make sure that our team members know that they have a purpose here at Advent Health.
And just going back over the industry, some of the challenges, how do yourself and the team, your team that works with you, how do you all stay up to date on some of the things that are happening in the industry? I mean, I have to assume that employment law, may change, every now and then.
Yeah.
So what are some of the tools and some of the things you all do maybe annually to stay up to date?
Yeah, and I think, Brandon, that's where when you think of the shared services model, they are the experts at the shared services level who help bring a lot of that information to us. But at the local division or regional level, we're also bringing resources to our team members to understand, what is happening when you look at the HR landscape across the nation, and how do we stay connected with the changes that are happening. And some of those things happen through SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. They are good with providing resources and updates to HR professionals. There's SHRM conferences that take place as well. I know one of the things that we do as an organization is we have HR Summit once a year for all of our HR business partners, all of our HR directors, where we talk about what's happening in the HR world across the nation. We have guest speakers from different healthcare different organizations who come and share best practices that are happening in the industry. And part of it too is As a healthcare organization, we can't be siloed. We have to be able to tap on the shoulder of another organization and say, hey, I see you're doing something amazing over there. Can you share those best practices with us? And so those things are important because if an organization is doing something over here, how do we partner with them to learn a little bit more of what's happening in that part of the country or what's happening in that industry, that may start to impact us. Today, we're competing with the Chick-fil-A's of the world, the Buc-ee's, and those different organizations who wasn't a thing for us when you think of a healthcare organization, but it is now. Those organizations are offering flexible scheduling. Their minimum starting rate are very high these days, and so we're now competing with not only healthcare organizations but also non-healthcare organizations, and so it's important to stay update and connected with those changes. And a lot of times we get a lot of that information from our shared services partners who, they are out there finding the data, finding the resources, and sharing that with us.
I think that's so helpful to know, and to the point that you made of competition not being just within the healthcare space really reminds us all, especially as internal team members, on why it's so important to be on purpose with what we're doing and what our mission is. And I think that really ties in so well, Wilkie. And going back to your purpose, and I know you're obviously very heavily involved in your community there at Advent Health Waterman. So if you could just speak about what you do in your community and how you feel that connection that you've built with the local community has improved your leadership and your partnership with those in the area, and attracting new hires and new talent to your facility.
Yeah, for me, I sit on a few boards here in our community as a board member, really to represent Advent Health as an organization, but also to build those partnerships. As much as possible, we're trying to get out to the schools and talking to the students, not just those at the college level, but talking to those students in elementary school and middle school and high school, starting to get them interested in healthcare from a very early age, because that's going to help us build a pipeline that we're going to need for the future. And so for me, being involved in my community is very important. I think it's something that Advent Health as an organization, we value as well. My team and I, once a year, we participate in Week of Caring, where we go out and we volunteer at a local organization. So we did that last year. We're planning to do this year. We're planning to do it this year as well. And that helps us to stay connected with our community and also to give back to our community. For Advent Health Waterman, we're probably the second largest employer in Lake County. And so many of our community residents know who we are. And so it's important that we're involved in our community. And that take many forms. It can take forms of, are we participating in breast cancer awareness? Are we volunteering at a shelter? Are we collecting socks for homeless people so we can donate to homeless organizations? So, but really for me, I truly enjoy connecting with students, from middle school all the way up to college, and really sharing with them just how amazing healthcare is. And you don't only have to be a nurse or a doctor to work in healthcare, but there's so much more you can do at a hospital than just be a nurse or a doctor.
That's amazing. And I'm so grateful as a recruiter. I'm grateful that, when you think about our service standards, one of them being make it easy,
Mhm.
we have people in the human resource space that are going out into the community, right? Engaging with the community, partnering with the community, sitting on these boards. All of that is a way to make it easier for our recruiters, right? And our sourcers who, they're just not out there trying to find the best candidates. You yourself are making those strategic moves, out in the community and doing whatever you can. And I really love that about Advent Health. I think that it's just truly a joint effort from top to bottom, right? Everyone understands that we all have a part to play in making this a really great workplace. And so I appreciate you being a part of the community and really being intentional about that as well. I wanted to ask, you're diligent to ensure team member recognition and appreciation are built into the DNA of your facility. What do you find means the most to your team members in terms of team recognition?
Yeah. Great question, Brandon. If you were to talk to anyone, they will tell you that Wilkie really enjoys recognizing team members. For me, what I find that really is important to our team members is that personalized recognition. It's not just, hey, congratulations, everyone. Everyone gets a trophy or everyone gets a sticker, right? It's really, hey, Brandon, you really did an amazing job today living our service standards. We want to formally recognize you. We want to thank you. Really calling out that person for a very specific moment, something that they've really done that was impactful in our organization, because that tells our team members that, hey, you paid attention. You saw me having a difficult moment with that patient or with that family member or whatever it was, and you recognize it. You saw that this was something that I did that brought value to the organization. And so I think what our team members love about Waterman is that our recognition is very personalized. Um, it's not this one size fit all. We try to find ways to really see what our team members are doing, finding things that our team members are doing, being intentional about what our team members are doing and finding ways to recognize them. So, you will see me rounding, you will see me on the units in the department. If it's the Daisy Award, which is an award for nurses that is nationally recognized, or here at Advent Health Waterman, we have what is called the Whole Heart Award, which is essentially our Employee of the Month. We recognize team members for living our service standards. We find stories that are impactful where team members have gone above and beyond, and we share those stories. And we select an individual every month to be our Whole Heart Award recipient. And there's some cool perks that come with that. You have your own parking space, which is very coveted. A lot of people want to have their own parking space when they come to work. Um, and so I think, to answer your question, hopefully I did, is really recognition has to be personalized. It really has to be personalized because people will remember that you took the time to acknowledge something that they've done that they may have seen just as, this is just part of my day-to-day job. This is just something I was doing. I wasn't doing it for praise. I wasn't doing it for recognition, but they realized, man, you saw what I did as going above and beyond, and you took the time to really call me out and recognize me for that.
And that means so much. And obviously, I'm sure that means an incredible amount to your team members. And just knowing that you've built this into the process and the culture of your facility changes the way that everyone looks at each other, appreciates each other, speaks to one another. I'm sure that filters down. I know I've seen it myself in process, especially interacting with your facility, and I know many others have as well. For those who are listening who maybe haven't had the chance to visit Advent Health Waterman, it is a family facility. They all treat each other as family members, and that comes from the top, and that comes from the culture that Wilky builds. And obviously, Wilky, your dedication and efforts have not gone unnoticed from your team members. In 2020, you won the Make a Difference Award. Would you be able to explain to our listeners what this award is and what winning that meant to you?
Yeah. So, we award the You Make a Difference Award every year during Hospital Week. It's where we identify those team members who truly have made a difference in our organization. And so, in 2020, my I was an HR manager at the time, and my HR director submitted me for the You Make the Difference Award. And so it was really for my ability to recognize team members, the recognition that we bring to team members, and the way I work with my team, the way at the time I had 3 employees reporting to me, and my ability to be able to support that team, um, help that team during, when COVID was coming into place, so much was changing, but helping to keep my team intact and caring for them at a personal level. It's like, yes, we come here every day and we have work to do, but how do I ensure that I'm caring for my people, for my employees? How do I ensure that I'm caring for my employees? And how do I ensure that the things that are important to them outside of work are important to me, their family, their loved ones. My child is sick today. I have to go. Let's find ways to accommodate that. And so it was very overwhelming when I got the award. I think I was in tears the whole time, um, because to me, it says that my leader was paying attention and made the recognition personal for me. And so again, it is one of those awards we award to our team members during hospital week, as a recognition. And so I was super excited when I received the award, but it takes a team for me to be able to do what I do every day. And so part of that recognition, I ensured that I shared it with my team.
That's amazing, man. Shout out to you. Shout out to Advent Health, just recognizing, awesome employees, and to win that. I mean, I know you're a modest guy, but to win that in 2020, right? The COVID year was a very difficult year. To win that during that year just speaks volumes. I did have one question before we give a final thought. As far as and really for our listeners, as far as what it looks like in going up the HR ladder within Advent Health, the different roles, if you can, like starting from, is it, I know we have some roles called employee experience partner and, maybe even HR manager, and other companies or organizations may have different titles, but can you just tell us what does that ladder look like, as far as the titles? Maybe that way people can kind of understand where they may fall if they're trying to, join or pivot into HR.
Yeah, and our titles here at Advent Health are a little different. And if you really look at them, I think when I first got here, I was like, oh man, those are pretty cool titles, but they're really call out that the importance of relationship building and the work that we get to do in HR. So, for example, we have employee experience partners. For other organizations, that could be an HR generalist, it could be an HR coordinator, it could be an HR assistant, just depending on the organization you work for. Um, for our HR managers, we call them associate HR business partners. That's equivalent to an HR manager at a different organization. Our directors are referred to as HR business partners. So the industry standard, you may hear HR director. Depending on the industry you work for, it could be an HR vice president. That looks a little different here at Advent Health, but the HR business partner is truly an HR director here at Advent Health. We have some different roles, employee relations specialist, which I think is pretty standard across the industry. Trying to think of some other ones that we may have. But at the campus level, at the hospital level, what we have is an HR business partner, an associate HR business partner, an employee experience partner, and then depending on the size of your hospital, you may have a senior employee experience partner, which can be equivalent to a senior HR generalist at a different organization. And those are different at every campus. At my campus, I have two employee experience partner, and they focus on different areas of HR. So they specialize in an area. And so depending on where you are in the organization, you may use those differently. But those are some of the titles that we have at the hospital level.
Thank you, Wilky, for breaking that down. And as Brandon said, there are probably some that are listening that maybe see some of our roles pop up and wanted to get a better understanding of how that translates. So appreciate you breaking that down. And as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to say how much we appreciate your time today and sharing your insights, your expertise within HR. And I know there's so many pieces of information that our listeners can take away from you today and hopefully can be inspired by your dedication and your passion for HR, but really mostly for helping others and being a support for them within Advent Health. And I know even before you joined the organization as well. So what is one final thing that you would like our listeners to take away from this conversation? How do you hope that your story will impact others?
Yeah, I think what will be important is, I come from a family of nurses. There's so much more to healthcare than nursing and to being a doctor. I think that's important for people to understand that if you think of any business, whatever position you may think of that business may have, we probably have a position here in Advent Health. So I think it's important for people to think of healthcare not necessarily only caring for patients. I don't get to care for patients, but I get to care for people who care for our patients. And so if you don't like to touch blood and you don't like to do all of that good stuff, you don't like needles, well, I will tell you, you don't have to. You don't always have to do that. We have clinical roles, we have non-clinical roles. So for me, what I want people to take away from this is that, there's so much to healthcare that you can do, but healthcare is not for everyone. You have to have compassion. You have to be able to lead with your heart, and you have to be able to find times where you have to extend a lot of grace. People don't come to hospitals because they're happy and well. They come to us in some of the most devastating times in their lives, and we have to be able to extend that compassion. Um, the technology that we have, any healthcare organization can acquire it, right? If you have the money, you have the capital, you can buy the technology. The education that you and I have, if you anyone can have everyone has access to the education, right? But what sets us apart is the compassion that we bring to the role that we have at Advent Health, how we care for people, how we treat people. That's really what sets us apart from any organization, because a lot of the things that we have, as an organization, people can have access to it, but how we treat people, um, how we extend grace, how we show compassion is important. We're a faith-based organization, and you will see that throughout our organization in various ways, not just in the form of a prayer, before after having a difficult conversation with a team member, or a team member who just lost a loved one, but you can see that in various forms in our organization. And so what I would want people to know for sure is that if you're coming to work in healthcare, you have to have compassion. You have to have a love for people. And you also have to know to extend grace when grace is needed. And so, I hope my story about my journey to healthcare will also help people to understand that, you can make of your career what you want of it. You just have to be intentional. You have to share those with other people. Don't keep it to yourself. Share with your leader. Find a mentor. Find someone that you like. You know what? I want to be like Brandon when I grow up. And so I'm going to ask Brandon to be my mentor. Hey, Brandon, can you spend an hour a month with me? And, just connect, just talk, find a mentor. That was very helpful for me also as I entered my HR career, my HR journey, was finding a mentor in HR and saying to that person, hey, I really have a passion for HR. I would love to get into HR. Do you mind? What can you commit to 1 hour a month and just spending some time with me? Answering questions or sharing some things that I should be doing to step into to be able to help me step into the HR profession. And so, I would tell people you're never too old for a mentor. You can be 65 and your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be older than you. That your mentor can be younger than you. It's finding that person that you think is going to add value to your life, or that person who you said, you know what, I really admire the work that this individual does, and I would like to learn a lot from them. So that's my story, and that's my journey to healthcare. It's been an amazing journey, and I see myself. Um, you know, someone said to me recently, if you didn't work in healthcare, you didn't work in HR, what would you do? And I said to them, I honestly don't know, but I honestly don't plan on finding out. So here I am.
Good. So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Wilky will not be leaving us anytime soon, because he loves human resources so much. But that's awesome, and we appreciate just the time that you've taken to just go over your career and bring life to all the amazing things that human resources has at Advent Health. So thank you for listening to the Whole Career Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date with the latest episodes. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram page at Life at Advent Health. Until next time, take care.